introduction. So it's my extreme pleasure to welcome Alexis Hope as our 521 speaker. And where's it now? Yes. Oh, okay, great. To welcome Alexis Hope as our 521 speaker this week. Alexis is an alum of the department. She got her bachelor's degree in 2010, master's in 2012, which you can actually see there on the slide, and then left us to go pursue a PhD at MIT, where she worked on a variety of projects, including a pretty groundbreaking hackathon around maternal health, which she, I think, is going to talk about a little bit. Yeah. She's also a musician, and I think on Bandcamp you can download her albums. She is an incredibly versatile designer, has worked both with large companies and now has launched a startup. So the last couple of weeks, we've heard from some people talking about product design in large companies and product management. We're going to hear from Alexis today a little bit about what it's like to build product in a smaller company, startup environment. Alexis, thank you so much. Yeah. Welcome. And I will monitor the chat as usual. Feel free to post questions in the chat during the talk. Alexis is happy to answer questions as the hour goes by. And for those of you in the room, feel free to raise your hands. There are people in the room, so those of you online, you know, come to me in person if you can. It's very fun to actually see. All right, thanks. Alexis, take it over.
Nice to see you all here and online folks. Yeah, it's quite special to be back. Like that said, I've been gone for like a decade, and I really love my time in HCDE, so it's exciting to be back. I'm a little bit scattered this morning. My sister had a baby last night, which is very exciting. So I'm both overjoyed and also a little bit chaotic. So we'll see how it goes.
Overjoyed, underslept.
Yeah, all of those things. Yes, so the talk, I'm going to talk today around the themes of designing for self-compassion, play, and creativity. I think these are concepts that I've only just come to really feel full ownership of, because I think I felt before that bringing these ideas into design was less serious than some other things you could do, especially if you're trying to do social impact work. But the longer I've been in the field, the more I realize that not only are these things I really think critical to making social change happen, but also these are where my unique voice and interests as a designer come from. So I'm very happy that I finally come to these. I wanted to start by just referencing some of the work that I did back when I was in the department, actually with Beth Hope over here. We had a project where we were redesigning a portable ultrasound machine for midwives in low resource regions. And that was in collaboration with a radiologist here from UW Medicine, Dr. Robert Nathan. Involved a lot of field work. We did interviews with mothers about their experiences receiving ultrasound. Because sort of the idea here was that ultrasound can be used as a really great screening technology for detecting high-risk pregnancy complications like twins or breech, which my sister had actually just yesterday. And so ultrasound can be a way to give people some more information to make a decision to give birth at a healthcare center versus at home where so yeah, we did a lot of field work and a lot of interface design work, both here in Seattle and Kenya and Uganda. That project went on a couple years and was funded by the Gates Foundation, and learned a ton from that project. And it's really kind of what got me to stick around in the field, because I actually was going to drop out of college before I found HCDE. I forgot to mention that, but I saw a poster for HCDE on the back of a bathroom stall. It was right when you all were changing the name from technical communication to HCDE. And I was like, oh, humans and engineering, that's what I've been looking for all along. So really grateful to the department and this project for kind of getting me my start. So then after I left with the master's here, I went to the Media Lab at MIT, which is kind of like an interdisciplinary research center that they describe themselves as inventing the future at this intersection of art, science, design, and engineering. So my colleagues worked on everything from prosthetic limbs to learning technologies for children to genetic engineering, all kinds of things. So it was like an environment where I learned a lot from people all the time about stuff I didn't know. So it was really great. And I spent about a decade there and just finished my PhD and a postdoc last year. So I wanted to just give like a brief tour of some of the stuff I've been up to in the time since I've been away from here, and then I'll talk a little bit about the startup and what I'm building now. And hopefully you'll see, it's a lot of eclectic stuff, but hopefully you'll see that kind of thread of creativity and play and self-compassion throughout all of these topics. This was kind of the core of my dissertation work at the Media Lab. It was called the Make the Breast Pump Not Suck Hackathon. And this is the team over here that I worked on it with me. And you may recognize Rebecca Michelson down in the bottom left. So there's a lot of HCDE connections to this project, including Beth was at both 2 out of the 4 that we held. My sister came to this one too, who's also a HCDE student, so lots of connections there. And that project kind of came out of the recognition that, like I said, the Media Lab is a place where it kind of prides itself on inventing the future. And so I think a colleague and I she had just had her 3rd baby, getting a little frustrated about why there's like certain types of technologies and tools that get neglected when other things are priorities for innovation. So enter the breast pump. People hate it. People who use it hate it. And so we had like an internal kind of, we thought that a group of us, of new parents and other allies, would redesign the breast pump ourselves. But what we ended up doing instead, because we kind of put a blog post out there with some of our ideas and got lots of feedback from mom communities online and people who were like, oh my God, MIT is finally doing something that matters. So we really heard that, and we decided to host a hackathon around it, a series of hackathons over 6 years. So it was both a series of hackathons and also a co-design project where we work with a lot of community organizations who work not just on improving breast pumps, but also breastfeeding support in general, which in this country, there's huge kind of disparities, along socioeconomic and racial lines around who gets to access actually breastfeeding, because it takes time and it's not super easy, and there's no paid leave for the majority, 85% of people in this country. So there's a lot of barriers to it. So we wanted to talk not just about the technology, but use that kind of as a Trojan horse into the larger space of issues. And, you know, this is kind of what a lot of hackathons look like. I just found this picture from some Wired article about a hackathon. But we really wanted ours to look and feel quite different given the topic, and also just given our passion for kind of rethinking what innovation spaces look like, who participates in them, and what are they concerned with. So our hackathons had stuff like this, moms soldering with babies on their back, which I think is just the best thing to see. People sitting on the floor sewing things, because also at a hackathon you see like the high tech prioritize over lower tech solutions. So these folks were working on new kinds of garments to make breastfeeding easier, which is totally an innovation. And another HCD cameo over there, Christina Krause, on the right, she lived in Boston at the time. She's a master's alum, and she was working on this project with these folks. So that was pretty cool. We also wanted to have kids and a culture of families making things together at the hackathon. So that was like a big part of what we put together, trying to make it a welcoming space. And then the sort of last detail I'll mention is we really rethought kind of what happens at the end of a hackathon. Because, you know, there's always like the go up on stage, pitch your idea in an entrepreneurial kind of sense. Instead, we had more of a science fair approach, which we thought was appropriate for this type of event, where it really was about knowledge sharing and two-way conversations. And yeah, it felt great. And we did, you know, we had some prizes and things like that we borrowed from hackathon structure, but rethought of, that I don't have time to get into today. But yeah, this project was amazing, and yeah, lasted like 6 years. So it's the core of my dissertation work there. And then just to give you an idea of some of the, like one of the things that came out of the event that I think really showcases like why it matters who you have in the room. You know, it wasn't just a lot of, you know, young tech folks. We had people with deep community organizing and advocacy experience. We had parents, lots of things. So this here was a group from New Orleans, the New Orleans Breastfeeding Center, and they put together this infant ready emergency feeding kit for breastfeeding in natural disasters, which of course is something that they have a lot of experience and context around. So if those folks had not been in the room, this type of innovation wouldn't have happened. So I think it's like a perfect example of who's in the room really matters for what ideas you come up with. And then another kind of piece of this was we are always kind of thinking about like systems thinking in this respect. So yeah, it's not just the technology, like I said, it's the sort of, there's a context of use around the breast pump, which is the fact that a lot of people are going straight back to work. And so they kind of have to use a breast pump. And in fact, using a breast pump alone is actually a luxury in itself because they're very expensive. So there's a whole lot of other issues. So while the hackathon was happening in one room, we also had a Make Family Leave Not Suck policy summit in the other room, where we had people who were thinking about, what would it look like if this country did have equitable paid leave across, different types of jobs for shift workers, not just tech workers who are getting those benefits a bit more now. And to really think about what's the strategy, especially in our current political climate, that would be required to push that forward. So yeah, there's a lot of people really working on these issues. I think Washington State's pushed some stuff forward. Rebecca Michelson from the department is pretty well informed about these types of changes lately. So you should talk to her if you want to know a bit more. And then the last thing on this project is, yeah, there's also a significant research component to it, since we're all pretty much housed, inside of academia. So we wrote traditional papers for Chi and CSCW and some others, but we also worked really hard to make the results of the parts of the research more accessible to designers, medical professionals, and so forth. So this is a book we put together called Speaking Our Truths. And so we interviewed parents across the United States from different contexts, different socioeconomic backgrounds, with a special focus on LGBTQ+ parents and people with sort of experiences outside the mainstream. And then we had Q&A thing, and you can't quite read it here, but at the bottom it says what could have made it better. So we were always trying to distill some of these learnings into findings that may actually be actionable for designers or policymakers, as well as with the storytelling component. So to shift gears on that for a sec to a completely different project, this was my master's thesis project at the Media Lab, and it was called Bold. And this was like a publishing platform for people to tell stories with additional context. Because this was sort of in an era where I think it's even worse now, but where you would read a news article and have no idea, things were getting so complicated. The war in Crimea was actually what birthed this project. My colleague and I were like, okay, there's a lot of things we don't understand about this story. So what it is it's a way to write stories with, by linking them to different kinds of media contexts. So it's a little bit like a visual Wikipedia. So here you can see someone's writing a story on the left, and then on the right, you could search YouTube for a video to link to a specific piece of text, or Google Maps, you could bring in an interactive map there. And it ends up creating stories kind of like this, where you can click on these links and the media cards will zoom right over. So it's an interactive reading experience, reading and writing experience. And it ended up getting taken up quite a lot. It was originally designed we thought about a news context, but it got taken up a lot by high school students, college students, people who were more familiar or interested in writing with multimedia in a creative, expressive way. So students wrote tutorials, music playlists, recipes, science, articles, all kinds of things. It's always a surprise. And it's still up actually, so you can check it out. I think it's at readfold.com. I think the most fun part about this project was putting something out there into the world with one idea of what it might be used for, the news context, and then getting back all this totally stuff you couldn't have imagined, which I really do love. And then the other part that was pretty fun was just the chance to really radically rethink UI. And I really love that this project gave me permission to do that, because we basically just invented a new way of reading and writing and said like, okay, this is a thing now. And so yeah, it got like recognized by some UI people who are interested in UI design. And didn't like take off as a form, but I really appreciated the chance to actually experiment with different expressive formats in that way. And again, like give people a space to play in. So that was really important to me. Another project I worked on there for a while was with this group called the Ocean Discovery League, and kind of similar to the behind what was behind the hackathon project around like who gets to innovate, who's in the room when we're designing technologies. This project had a similar thread. So we were talking about who gets to explore the ocean. So the kind of thought is like the traditional folks who, when we think of like ocean explorers, it's like Jacques Cousteau and all these sort of similar looking men who get permission to explore the world. But what about, you know, like these women here young women who live in Trinidad, and they have ocean right around their borders in their backyards, and their oceans are being, you know, exploited by oil and gas companies who are very interested in leasing blocks of ocean around there to mine for resources. But wouldn't it be great if the young women who live there were actually able to explore and understand their oceans? So yeah, we're working to build some camera systems and other training materials and lower cost equipment so that folks could actually explore their own backyard. And then the last MIT project, I spent a lot of time with the lifelong kindergarten group at the Media Lab, which they're all about play and creative learning, mostly applied to the experiences of children. And I kind of came to them late with, I sort of think about that, but more applied towards adults. But it was, you know, great to be in context with them. You might be familiar with them from, if you've heard of Scratch, the programming language for kids. It's like a block-based programming language where kids can make games, animations, and like really all kinds of things. It's amazing to see what they do. And then most recently, we're working on like a mobile phone version of Scratch, because it's not Scratch, it's inspired by, but that really takes advantage of like the form factor of the phone and all the things you can do with the phone out in the world. So like you can record found sound, you can use images you take, you can, you know, collage things from out in your world. So it's really reimagining like the context of use of programming for kids and what they can make, which is really exciting. And I think this will probably launch in October. I'm still working with them a little bit on it. And then the very last thing, just a fun thing I did that I think kind of shows some of the thread of my interests, is an event called Trash Club. And this is like a social event where people come together and bring recycled materials, and we just make stuff together. And it's either like do it at my house, or this is one where we did it in a class. We're teaching an industrial design class in Shanghai. And so we just had students kind of say like, okay, what can you make with just stuff that's around you? And so we have a great time. We try to elevate the experience of trash a little bit. So we have like a gallery walk where students will, you know, appreciate the objects that they've all created as if they were a museum. And we usually set up like a photo studio so people can take fancy product shots, other stuff, and just some examples of fun stuff people may like. I love this one over here. This was from a student in Shanghai. He just used like some cups from the takeout place and some chopsticks to make this just like absolutely beautiful little cart. So I love to see what people make. Homemade paintbrushes. And then, yeah, we have a little, I haven't kept this up to date well enough really, but it's time to bring Trash Club back to Seattle, I will. But so yeah, we have ways where people can share all the cool stuff that they make with each other. And again, it ranges from like the purely artistic to sometimes like industrial design concepts. And it's, I don't think there are enough places for adults to play in this world. So that's definitely something that matters to me. Okay, now, are there any questions or anything before no?
No, just some people emphasizing how terrible breast pumps are.
Yes, seriously. Okay, so now I'm going to shift a little bit into what I'm up to now, because all of that was sort of done in the container of academic work at the Media Lab, where there's not really a lot of pressure to think about sustainability of what you're making or anything like that. Or if you do, if you are trying to think about that, you're often beholden to like getting grants to support your work, which can be challenging, as we learned from the ultrasound project. So yeah, I was kind of eager to maybe experiment with building something that could be financially sustainable from a business perspective. So that's sort of what's on my mind now. And I'm co-teaching with Cheryl Kababa, the designing a human-centered venture class that Beth developed. And yeah, that's been a great space for me also to reflect on the startup journey I'm on now. So focused, I've been working with as a co-founder for about a year now, but it was started by Nadira Kusanova, who's also UW alum from CSE, who I met when I was her barista, actually not here at UW, but so you never know, you're gonna meet your co-founder. And I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing and connect it a little bit to some of the other interests I shared. So yeah, before I start, I just want us all to think about like a moment when you were able to do your best work, like actually sit down and get some work done. Trying to remember the last time. Okay, maybe 2 days ago for me, really, I was like able to actually sit down and focus. And yeah, when you think about like, what did that feel like to actually get something done, and what made it possible for you to actually like get motivated to do it, first of all, get into a deep flow, and then feel this sense of accomplishment around it. And just from our work on this project, these are some of the things that we hypothesize make it a little easier. So a calm and focused environment, having confidence, clarity about what you're even working on, actually enjoying it, feeling accountable to other people, avoiding the busy work trap, and then like the feeling that your work actually matters. I think that's a big one. They sound simple. It was really simple to put them all on the slide, but I think these are really very hard things to tap into in our current work culture. So yeah, I think it feels really good when you're able to actually do that. I love coming out of like being in the flow of something and really feeling like I did something real that mattered, and I didn't check my phone every 3 minutes for an hour, you know, it feels really good. But I think it's really hard to get focused. And this is sort of the core problem that we're trying to help people work through. And one of our hypotheses here is like the way we work is broken. And this is, if you're kind of a grim ecological buff, this is an ant death spiral, where the ants are like following the pheromones of each other, and they just kind of like basically exhaust themselves by going around in a circle. And I thought this was like a grim but apt metaphor for a lot of the situations we find ourselves in, where we don't necessarily have intentionality. If we're at, you know, a company where we have like a million meetings that we're pulled into, there's no clear strategy, we can't carve away time for ourselves to do things. And we can't pull back and think about what our long-term goals are because we're so stuck in the day-to-day. So we're just spiraling. So yeah, I think like we're pretty distracted, as we know, with all of our attention spans and the technologies trying to claim our time. A lot of people are burnt out, especially after the pandemic. I think that was really highlighted. People are struggling with getting stuff done. But not only that, like mental health, work-life balance, feelings of isolation. There's a lot of things. We're not robots or automatons. We can't just turn on work when we want. So there's a lot of like emotional and psychological context behind our ability to work. And then the last thing I kind of alluded to, like we're working a lot, but maybe not accomplishing the things that actually matter to us. So we're email black holes, back-to-back meetings, like to-do lists that never end, all of that. So we want to help people get out of that trap, and we want to help ourselves get out of that trap. And it's actually required for us to build this thing that we learn how to get out of this trap ourselves. So what we're all about is trying to help people make progress on the things that actually matter to them, whether that's personal, professional, or creative goals. All that stuff is on the table with daily structure, accountability, and community. So what that actually means, we have kind of 3 core aspects to our online service, we have these things called wake up calls. They're like 15-minute calls where it's a planning call for the day, and you start your day by setting goals and breaking down your day a little bit, and then meditation. And it's with a friendly community and hosted by a professional facilitator. So that's sort of like your daily routine and anchor for your day. We also have what's called community sessions, and those are like get into the flow sessions. So they're like 90-minute sessions that have, again, with a trained facilitator that encourages you to take breaks at certain points, where you kind of sprint towards like specific goals that require deep work and focus. And this is based on a principle that's actually really getting more traction in the ADHD community called body doubling, where just like being in the presence of other people doing the same thing as you makes you more likely to do it. And that's, a lot of people are like, wow, that felt like magic, but it's just being with other people who are doing the same thing, you have other supportive people. And then the last of the pieces is kind of like a bit of one-on-one support as well. So we have our hosts who you can share your goals with, and they'll check in on you, help you bust through any blockers you're having. There's often like a light, we're not like licensed therapists, but there's a light therapeutic aspect to their work, I'd say. Like people often come to us when they're very much struggling, overwhelmed, they have burnout, they may be caregivers, other things getting in the way. And so some of that stuff our hosts help people work through before they can even get to the work part of it. And here's like a little comic that one of our members made just the other day, actually, which I thought was really cute. So yeah, she breaks it down, the wake up calls. She just turned from working full-time for an institution into being a freelancer. So we find that, you know, people who are their own bosses sometimes struggle with knowing like what to work on. So she's saying that pick goals for the day, break them down, meditate. That's kind of how she starts every day. She's been at it for a month, which is super awesome. And then I'm going to get into a little bit of like where we're at design-wise and what's on my mind, just to give you the behind the scenes there. Everything we do now is with Google Meets. So we're just kind of using off-the-shelf parts to basically prototype the experience that we want. And so this is just an example of like one of the community sessions, but with the Google Meets thing. But we are working on building our own kind of specific technology platform to support everything we want to do for our members, because there's so many ways in which this is just not enough for the vision that we really have to support people. So yeah, my work right now looks like a lot like a lot of design work, messy sketches on colored paper, trying to figure it out. And we're right now in the middle of, we're about to launch our mobile phone companion app that goes along with the call. So that's like our kind of first step. And then, so this is where people will sort of set their goals and then do some of the break it down work that I mentioned we do in the calls. And then they sort of have like a record of everything that they can keep track of. And then we also are, this is a very early draft, but working on our web video platform that's going to integrate all the features we want to make it like a more supportive community and do much more than these kind of out of the box video solutions can do. So that's like where we're at now with the technology side of it. And then just to tell you a little bit about who we're working with to make this happen. Our hosting team, we're a fully remote company, by the way. So that's also an interesting design challenge that we can talk about in Q&A. But our hosts have experience in organizational psychology, teaching and facilitation, entrepreneurship coaching, addiction counseling and habit formation, and then meditation and mindfulness. And we really found that actually teachers make fantastic hosts, because they're fantastic at breaking things down easily for people, creating safe and comfortable spaces. So we've had really great luck with teachers. And yeah, so this is like our core all-star team at the moment. And then just to mention like who's coming to these sessions. a lot of different people, but these are what we've noticed are kind of core to most of them. A lot of them work either hybrid or remote, so they may be like isolated from office culture at times, or if they're in office culture, they're stacked with meetings and it's hard for them to carve out the time for themselves. So we're helpful for both of those. They have side hustles. So we've got entrepreneurs and freelancers and so forth. They're in leadership roles, so they're very overwhelmed and stressed, and they need like a place to actually every morning to be like, okay, what's my top priority today? There's a million fires I need to fight, but what would a success look like today? A lot of them are working towards long-term goals, whether that's finishing a master's degree or trying to get a new job. And I should mention, yeah, a lot. Layoffs have affected our members as well. So that's something we're responding to. How do we help our members get geared up for everything they need to do to prepare to find new jobs? Struggling with burnout. Like I said, people often come to us in a bit of a state of crisis to start with. And then many of them may have an ADHD diagnosis. And that's kind of a surprising thing to us. I mean, it makes sense now that I think about it, because many of us on the team have ADHD and also, but then we started to hear from our members that was like a more common experience. So we actually went to a ADHD conference recently to learn more about this population. And this is actually a fun startup story. So it's like it was at like the International ADHD Conference. And like in the room are like big pharma companies selling their medicines, or like big school, like big fish, and that have like really fancy booths and stuff. But we're like, we want to be there and we want to talk to people, like being from HCDE, and that like, which ties in what we learn in HCDE, I feel ties in so well with what you need to do a startup or be entrepreneurial, because you have to listen, you have to iterate, and that's like so much of what we're trained to do. So we had to be there. So you can see our booth is a little, I wish I had pictures of the other ones with like the big, but it's a little unusual. But we on Craigslist, we like found a local artist who would help like bring some furniture and help us design it to make a cozy space. And it's one of those things, like you do what you got to do, and we like created a cozy little happy space for people, and it was extremely different from all the other vibes at the booth, and that brought a lot of people into our space that we were able to talk to. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And oh yeah, there's Nadira up here, and our third co-founder is Justin Trobeck, who's a recent Twitter alum, I guess you could call it. Okay, and then just one thing that we really learned from, I think especially that we all care about, but we learned especially from this context, was around how important self-compassion is, because especially in the ADHD community, there's so much kind of feeling that people are a failure, and that there's like something, they're always doing something wrong. There's something wrong with them for not being able to keep up with the expectations of the modern workplace and all these distractions that I mentioned. I mean, so that I'm going to show you like a couple of the ads that we've been making to find our members, because I think they highlight like some of what our values are and what we're trying to put out there. But like there's this one, just like, there's nothing wrong with you. Like that's something we really believe about all of them. There's nothing wrong with you. Like everybody struggles to get things done, really. And so yeah, we try and bring self-compassion into everything we do to make people feel like this is a space for them, and for other people like them, which I think is like most of us. And then like we try to bring a sense of humor into things as well. Like this is when we're announcing the new time, 7 a.m. for the East Coast. Most of our, people like they want to have a morning routine, they want to get started, but it's hard. I don't want to get out of bed in the morning either. So we try and lean into like reality. And I think there's so much like hustle culture, toxic productivity, all this stuff out there that I just don't think works for the majority of people. So we try and take a more realistic and sometimes humorous bent on it, which I think feels authentic to all of our voices as a team and seems to resonate with like the type of community that we want to build. So I think we'll probably keep with that approach. Yeah, I just wanted to mention in case it comes up in the Q&A, just some of the things that I'm currently thinking about as a co-founder and leading product here. One is like, what does healthy community among strangers look like? Because I think one of the things we've found is that like this thing about accountability, we've heard feedback from our members that like, okay, like it's great to go on a call and see other people, but if I don't know those other people or have any reason, they don't have any reason to care about me, I don't have any reason to care about them, then like, I don't really feel accountable to them. So I'm like thinking, you know, we want to build a healthy, supportive community, and we have like awesome moments of that I can share. But on the whole, I'm thinking like, how do we build that? There's so many bad examples of that out there. And then how do we build like community that's both supporting but not super distracting? Because we also don't want this to turn into like social media where people are not doing their work that they want to do because they're talking to each other. So that's a tough challenge. How can we help people create and commit to new habits and routines? That's a challenge. And, you know, something in the department we've talked a lot probably around like persuasive technologies and other things, which have their own ethical challenges that we'll certainly ourselves like wade through. But that's, it's hard for people to start something new, especially like I said, if they're in a moment of challenge or crisis. So that's something we have to think about. Scaling personal attention. I mean, we're in this age of like artificial everything AI. So we're kind of like making a big bet that actually like personal attention it matters more than ever now. So we're trying to figure out like, and it's like the relationships between our hosts and our members and the members with each other that really makes this whole thing work. So we're trying to think about how do we help our hosts like better support more clients at a time and actually be able to track their stories and really help them over time. So that's a core design challenge. How do we change productivity culture to center joy, play, and self-compassion? Like I said, those are core values of ours, and we think they just make life better. And I don't want to build a product that turns people into the ants in the spiral. So I'm trying to get out of that with these things. And then the last one, which is like interesting to me as a designer who's mostly worked on like project-based things, how do we build like a kind, supportive, and playful company culture? Like that's also a design challenge, and that's newer to me. I've never been in this type of leadership role, so I'm like, you know, that's top of my mind all the time. And as we grow, that becomes even more important. Yeah. So if you have any ideas on that, I would love to hear it. But yeah, that's definitely top of my mind. And then sort of the last thing I wanted to share before I open it up is like startup, any endeavor is like super hard, but the thing that's keeping me going is like all the things we hear from our members about how it's actually helping them. And, you know, you could call that like a human-centered lens, or if you're Amazon, I think they say like customer obsessed or whatever. But for me, it's just like there's nothing better in terms of work than working on something that actually is helping people like reclaim some of their agency, time, joy, all those things back. Like it's just been so rewarding, and I'm hoping that will get me through the inevitable hard stuff ahead. And then, okay, I'll close with, if you all wanted to try it, and I would love all your feedback as HCDE people who have many thoughts about probably all the design challenges that I mentioned. We have a code here for a free month. So you're free to try it out for the whole month, unlimited, everything, wake up calls, community sessions. And this text on here is from an unnamed other HCDE alum who's been using it. I won't reveal them, but I thought it was really fun. And yeah, I found this screenshot in my phone this morning, and I thought this kind of summed up part of what I hope for our community, is that maybe the way you are is excellent and you have many hidden tricks that you take for granted, but that others would greatly benefit from knowing. Probably stole it from someone's tweet. I'm sorry for the lack of attribution, but this is what I hope from our community, that like, you know, we all have ways of working that we can share with each other. And like our community at its best, I see people sharing their techniques with each other and sharing their struggles as well. And I think that's really beautiful, like that kind of honesty and all. So I'll close there and happy to take any questions.
I'm going to kick off with a question. So I know that you worked at a large tech company that I will not name. Is there anything, so you showed us some of the sketches and some of the ways that you're working on the product itself.
Yeah.
Are there certain processes or tools that you've been able to use in focus that never would have worked, say, in a large organization where you have multiple layers of accountability?
Yeah, I think it's like, well, I mean, the speed that we're able to work, I don't know if that's a process or a lack of process, but well, we have some light processes around it that I'll explain. But I think, yeah, just being able to like iterate from week to week and like really listen to our members about like, okay, this week, what are we hearing? And so like actually every Thursday we have a meeting, us co-founders, called Feedback Feast. And it's like, because we're getting feedback all the time and we started to get overwhelmed and we're like, okay, where do we, so we have like one Google Doc that we just like put it all in, and then we have a designated time to review it together. So then we can like read it and figure out what are our action items and next steps for each of those things. And that's been like helpful in keeping us accountable to what people are saying, but also like bucketing it so that we can make progress on like, because I think it's challenging to think both long term and then, but also now that we have we have members, several hundred members that we're supporting. So we also have to be attentive to our members now. So that can be a challenge. And then otherwise, Discord's been really great for us at this size and having kind of like a sort of a chatty culture. And oh yeah, I guess, yeah, speed, and then just like some ways of bucketing time so we don't get distracted all the time by everything. Yeah.
Thanks. Let's see. Yeah. Do you consult with professional people to find solutions? Actually, there was a question before this. Someone asked, can you talk a little bit more about body doubling? What is it? What are the benefits, and how does it work in a remote setting?
Yeah. So yeah, body doubling, like I mentioned, it's become sort of like a popularized term and concept in the ADHD community primarily. But it's really about being in the same space as others doing the same thing you are makes you more likely to do it. I think, you may have experienced it yourself in person if you like go to a coffee shop and everyone's like quietly working on their laptop and you're like, okay, I guess I'll do that too. And I think, around the science behind it, I've seen it linked to like mirror neurons and just the sort of base sociality of humans, like that we just kind of like want to fit into what we're around. I think it's also like soothing for people, it seems like, to just like, you may be panicked inside, but you look up on your screen and you see all these people quietly working and you're listening to like a lo-fi YouTube playlist that we give it, and you're like, okay, everything's okay. Like this room's not on fire. These people aren't on fire. And yes, I think definitely like the in-person versus online question is interesting because Focus actually started as Nadira started it as an in-person kind of like co-working space in Oakland, and then over the pandemic shifted to an online model. So yeah, I think that worked well, but I think it also works well in the online space when you have really strong facilitators who are good at kind of like making it feel more social, recognizing people by name and talking to them. And again, I think the stronger the bonds are between the people in the room, the more it works too. And so that's why we're so keen to support this, to think more about how to build community amongst our members. Yeah.
So, are there questions in the room? No, there's another question. So this is sort of picking up on what you were just talking about. Do you or anyone in your company consult with professional people to find solutions to the challenge here? Like to speak with licensed psychologists or therapists who host group sessions for any reason, whether it's addiction, mental health, etc., to learn more about the challenges and getting group members and strangers to feel more comfortable working together.
Yeah, so that was one of our big purposes for going to that ADHD conference, was to make a lot of contact with licensed therapists and clinicians, so that we can develop partnerships and think about, also some of our members are like maybe higher need than what we can support them with, especially if they have like specific challenges related to ADHD or even specific life challenges that a trained therapist would. So yeah, we're keen to develop like referral programs and ways to get people the support that they need. And then in terms of our own internal practice, our hosts, they have like master's degrees in organizational psychology and all these things. So our hosting team also has that knowledge, and we have a monthly practice called Host Knowledge Share, which is basically like our monthly chance to nerd out with each other, or one of the hosts will like give a presentation on a topic, let they know well, like a habit formation as it relates to addiction. That was one topic we did, and the person will share and we'll all kind of like co-learn together. So that's another big part of our company culture that we're trying to build, is just like always learning.
Have you had any conflicts yet about, so in HCDE, it's all about listening, right? And a lot of user research. If you think about these experts as one category of users, but then you also have your customers as another category of users. Have there been any sort of contradictory messages? And if so, how have you dealt with that?
I think that may be to come, because right now, we're doing all the, so actually I should mention, we also have like curriculum as well that we develop through, like each week there's a different theme. So in the wake up call, like we'll teach about different topics related to attention or productivity or whatnot. But our team is all kind of writing that content now. But when we fundraise, we certainly aspire to bring on like a curriculum developer or somebody who has like a higher level of expertise than us. And I could imagine that, because I think it's interesting to me, because at least my personal one philosophy I hold that might come in tension with this is like, I really think people need to learn what works for them in many of these situations. Like, I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to so many things in life, especially not like how to get stuff done when we're all so different and the way we think is so different, what we're experiencing is so different. So I hope we find someone who shares that similar value, but I could imagine being challenged on that.
So we're officially at time. So last question.
Yeah, I was curious more about how you're scaling the one-on-one consulting. You said you're doing one-on-one consulting, which is so important, like what you said, like what works with them, but you said at scale. So how is that?
Yeah, that's kind of like our core design challenge right now. We did have these like one-on-one sessions that were actually like video live with a person for 90 minutes. But that doesn't scale very well, especially if we want to pay our hosts well, which we do. So we've shifted more to like a email exchange model. That's where most of the one-on-one happens, but that is extremely cumbersome for certainly our hosts and not ideal for our members who don't want to clutter their inboxes with even more things to do. So I think we're shifting towards, like I mentioned, that app to have more of a chat-based model that our hosts can, and then that helps them keep better track of everyone. Like then, because emails they send them an email every day. It's not threaded, so it's very hard for them to keep track. They have to like rely only on their own memory and notes to keep track of people, and that's very challenging. So we want to make it easier for our hosts to like remember everybody and keep track of things. And I think that we can do through technology a little bit.
Humans, the hardest part.
I know, but also the most important part.
Yes.
We're doubling down on that.
Good.
So love the comments online also just about how nice it is to see this really truly human-centered work, and product and mindset is fantastic, and beautiful, tender, kind of human-centered work.
Thank you. Yeah, give it a try. Let us know. Poke holes in it. Love feedback, criticism, all that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The recording of
That's your side of it.
good.